So we should start now. We are
Right.
going live from Honorable MP Sujit Kumar's Facebook page now.
Right. Right. So, good morning and good afternoon if you are joining from elsewhere in India. So, let me wish you a very happy Raja festival, which is coming in 2 days in Odisha. Today, welcome to Global Development Dialogue from Honorable MP Sujit Kumar of Rajesh Subha's office. In this Global Development Dialogue today, we'll be talking about promoting climate resilient infrastructure in Odisha. This topic is extremely important today, given the frequency and intensity of disaster that is affecting, especially coastal states of India, and more focused on Odisha. Today, we have a fantastic panel of experts who are professionals, researchers, experts who have decades of experience working in disaster, climate change, resilience, and development in general. So this Global Development Dialogue is a platform created and curated by MP Office with direct guidance from MP Office team and Sri Sujit Kumar. In this context, we would like to just introduce briefly our team members, and will be reading about their little bit detailed biography once we invite them for their introductory remarks. Today, we have keynote speaker, Mr. Kamal Kishorji, member, National Disaster Management Authority of Government of India. We have Dr. Kamal Lochan Mishraji, Executive Director of Waste DMA. We have Abha Mishraji, Head of UNDP, State of Odisha. We have Dr. Ambikaji Nand, Head CSR Odisha, Tata Steel. We have Mr. Jyotiraj Patra, Lead Fellow and Project Manager from Oxfam, Cambodia. And I am your moderator, Mr. KK Das, Assistant Professor at Sri University, and moderating today on behalf of MP Office. So climate resilience infrastructure is an important topic given the recent focus on why we need to actually have a resilient infrastructural facility, as well as we need to go in that direction. The Chief Minister recently has announced that this is what our focus, immediate and long-term focus as well. So that is why this webinar has been organized to also with an intention to provide input to the government discussion, deliberation in the policy making process as well. Thank you and welcome to everyone. May I invite and request Honorable MP Sujit Kumar to give his message and an introductory remark. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Kamlaji. Good morning. Namaskar. Let me wish good health and safety to all our panelists and participants. We're passing through very difficult and challenging times. So may God keep you all healthy and safe. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. May I suggest a slight tweak in the format today, Professor Das, with your permission? I will be leaving at 10:30 due to other engagements. So I'll make some brief introductory remarks, and if you permit, can we let all the panelists, including our keynote speaker Kamal Kishorji, make introductory remarks in the next half an hour, and then you can carry on with the webinar. Is that okay?
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and my apologies that I'll be leaving at 10:30 due to some really unavoidable and pressing engagements, political engagements. On behalf of the MP office, I thank all our panelists, our keynote speaker, all the participants for taking out time on a Saturday morning to deliberate on this important topic. I see some background noise. I hear some background noise. Sorry. Can you mute yourself, Professor Das? Okay, thank you. As Professor Das was just outlining why we started the Global Development Dialogue, it's really a thought leadership platform series initiated by my office last year to convene experts and stakeholders like the ones we have today to have meaningful discussions on important and critical issues and topics that have regional, national, or global relevance and impact. And today's discussion is part of this series. Today's webinar topic, promoting climate resistant infrastructure in Odisha, is an extremely important and critical topic of discussion. And more so, it's timely and topical given the frequency of cyclone, the intensity of cyclone.
Voice is lost.
Sir, we have,
Hello?
yeah. Yes, we are back.
Okay. Did you lose me for a while?
Yes, few seconds, 30, 40 seconds.
Okay. So I was talking about the frequency of cyclones that the eastern front of India, eastern coast of India, especially states like West Bengal and Odisha have been witnessing in the last 2 decades or so, and large body of scientific studies are attributing this to climate change. I'm no expert in climate change, but I do believe that somewhere climate change definitely has a massive role to play in this frequency, in this huge increase in the frequency of cyclones that we see today. Coming back to the state of Odisha, I'm delighted and in fact glad to mention that our state government, the government of Odisha, has made tremendous strides in the last 2 decades in protecting lives and property during disasters. In fact, Odisha's disaster management model has been acclaimed and has received global recognition time and again by the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, and has been lauded by many organizations and individuals across the globe. The zero casualty, the zero casualty that the government of Odisha has been announcing prior to every major cyclone or severe cyclone, through effective utilization of the early warning systems, through evacuation, large-scale evacuation of the coastal population, has been very, very effective. Whether it is Hudud or Titli or Afani or Amphan or the recent Yas. By and large, government has been quite successful in achieving its target of zero casualty and minimizing loss of lives. We have seen this time and again. But so we have indeed come a long way from the super cyclone of 1999, where we lost, as per official sources, close to 10,000 people, and many times more than that official number if unofficial figures are to be believed. On the other hand, I do feel that we need much more to do in terms of protecting our critical infrastructure, whether it's power or roads or other infrastructure that we have along the coastline. OSDMA has been doing fantastic work, has been working with various stakeholders for sustaining, different practices that would reduce the risk and improve the resilience of the infrastructure. It has created probably hundreds of cyclone centers dotting the coastal landscape, trained a cadre of over 1 lakh volunteers, so on and so forth. Recently, the Honorable Chief Minister has also written to Government of India to assist and aid the state in creating disaster resilient infrastructure. So I think today's webinar will be a huge addition to this effort in terms of generating a knowledge bank, in terms of generating inputs that we can then submit to Government of Odisha, to Government of India, and hopefully some of this will be executable and implementable. So I'm keen to listen to the experts here because this is a subject very new to me, and really I have come here as a learner than to contribute. So without further ado, I would like to pass it on to you, Professor Das, to take forward. I really thank all our panelists and all the participants again for being with us on this Saturday morning to enlighten and educate us on this critical topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sujit sir, for your introductory remark and the kind of justification why we're here and what kind of contribution we intend to make to public discourse and to public policy making as well. Thank you for that brief introductory note. This is an important topic, and no better than the person who has walked in the field to talk about it. So may I invite Sri Kamalji Kishore, member, National Disaster Management Authority. Kamalji Kishore has worked on disaster risk reduction and recovery issues for more than 2 decades at the local, national, regional, and global levels. Prior to joining the NDMA, which is National Disaster Management Authority, he worked with the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, for nearly 13 years in New Delhi, Geneva, and New York. At UNDP headquarters, he has led global advocacy campaigns to address disaster risk reduction concerns in the UN's Sustainable Development Goals and the post-2015 development agenda. As program advisor, he also led the development of disaster and climate risk management related elements of the UN strategic plan, that is 2014 and 2017. Previously, as UNDP's regional advisor for South and Southeast Asia, he supported more than 10 countries on a range of public policy and institutional development issues, while also advising them on the use of appropriate risk reduction tools and methodologies. Kamalji Kishore has supported post-disaster recovery through strategic advice, need assessment, program development, coordination after major disasters in Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Iran, Myanmar, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Sri Lanka. Prior to UNDP, he served at the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center as Director for Information Research and manager of the Extreme Climate Events Program covering Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam. This was preceded by intensive field experience with the Action Research Unit for Development, which is TARU in India, where work on post-disaster reconstruction resettlement after 2 major disasters in Uttarkasi and Latu earthquakes in 1991-93 allowed him to apply his professional skills as an architect. Kamalji Kishore has a bachelor's degree in architecture from Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, and a master's degree in urban planning, land and housing development from the Asian Institute of Technology, Bangkok. So we would like to listen to you, Kamalji sir, and your experience at the local, regional, global level has been outstanding. You have been someone who has been giving advice and creating efficient systems to respond to disaster. And here is something that Odisha government is planning. And you may remember on May 28th, when Chief Minister tweeted thanking Prime Minister that we would not like to burden the central government now for the Yas cyclone recovery. We would like to focus on climate resilient the infrastructure and development in the long term, that he has indicated that he has asked the support from the Prime Minister. In that context, this webinar has been organized, and your inputs will be highly valued, sir. Over to you, Kamalji Kishore sir, for your keynote address.
Thank you very much, Kamalji, and greetings to Honorable MP. And I know his time is constrained, so I would click, and I don't want to lose this opportunity to get his attention on the issues on which he is showing his leadership. So I'll try to keep it very brief. Honorable MP, I would really like to compliment you for your leadership on this topic of climate and disaster resilient infrastructure. It is really a 21st century issue, and I'm really glad that you are catching the bull by the horns, so to speak. So compliments to you, and compliments to government of Odisha. Odisha has been a leader not just nationally but internationally. The whole world is looking at what Odisha does. Whether it is the UN offices or the New York Times, everyone talks about the successes is in Odisha. So that is a given. So the next generation of disaster risk management efforts, if they emerge from Odisha, this will not be a surprise. In fact, this is expected that Odisha will lead the next generation of disaster risk management efforts as well. I just want to highlight 7 points today. My first point is that we have indeed made remarkable progress in reducing losses or loss of lives in Odisha, but the loss of infrastructure, loss of livelihoods continues to remain very high. in Cyclone Fani, we celebrated the very low level of mortality, but $1.4 billion were lost in just one infrastructure sector, which is the power sector. And that is only the direct loss. I'm not even talking about the indirect loss. When the power goes down, the manufacturing unit goes down. When manufacturing unit goes down, the people lose their livelihoods. And the secondary tertiary impacts are even higher. So 1.4 billion is just direct, indirect impacts would be even higher. And remember, there are a lot of interconnections in infrastructure sectors. When power goes down, telecom goes down. When telecom goes down, ATM machines don't work. When ATM machines don't work, people are not able to draw cash from their own bank accounts, even when they are not looking for assistance from the government. When they don't have money, they don't go to the market. When they don't go to the market, market activities fail. So it's really the impact in one infrastructure sector really ripples across the system. So it's really important that we go beyond saving lives to also saving livelihoods. So that's my first point. My second point is that we really need to do a better job of assessing risk to infrastructure sectors, but also risk from infrastructure sectors. We have to be very careful. How do we rebuild our power infrastructure when it is lost? We have to prepare not just for winds that are occurring today in cyclones, but winds that might occur in 5 years, 10 years from now. So I think that whole area of how do we do a holistic assessment of risk for infrastructure planning, that is really one important area. The second area is, so my third point is looking at standards and regulation. We really need to upgrade our standards to meet the needs of not current risk, but future risk as well. When the wind speed increases, the extreme wind speed increases from 200 kilometers per hour to 220 kilometers per hour, the damage does not increase by just 10%. Damage increases by 200%. So and on the margins, as you increase the hazard just a little bit, the impacts are catastrophic. So we really need to improve our standards, regulate. So that's my third point. My fourth point is that we need to have a much better system of recovery preparedness. And I think Odisha has already done very good work in this area in recovery preparedness, particularly in power sector, in terms of whether it's stockpiling of power, poles, or having a roster of workers who will work there, having a whole plan, power sector preparedness plan. Odisha has done a lot of work. But we need to further improve that. My next point is, how do we ensure that all the financing of infrastructure projects really happens in a manner that it encourages, it nudges us towards resilience? So you have to handle the notion of resilience at the financing stage itself. When you're financing a road project, when you're financing a water supply project, when you're financing a power project, you have to ensure that in the financing itself, resilience is a key criteria by which the project is assessed. The project becomes bankable only when resilience measures are included in it, not just for the current risk, but future risk as well. My final point is that while we are talking about gray infrastructure, roads and telecom networks and power networks, we also have to think about green infrastructure or ecological infrastructure. The mangroves, the wetlands, the forests, these are all resources that help us mitigate the impact of disasters. And when we develop a new infrastructure, the gray infrastructure, we have to come up with an imagination where we can look at gray and green infrastructure and in an integrated manner, not in a separate way. It's not like, you leave the green infrastructure to the environment department and then the infrastructure departments are doing their own things. We have to go beyond just doing the environmental impact assessment to join the planning. How do we protect our natural resources, our green infrastructure, our ecological infrastructure, while we build our economic infrastructure as well? And my final point, my seventh and final point, is that Government of India, Honorable Chief Minister has said that, look, we are going to advance towards climate resilient infrastructure. As you probably know, Prime Minister has a global initiative. We have 24 countries that are a member of that. I have been anchoring that initiative. And there are 7 international organizations part of it. There's a coalition for disaster resilient infrastructure. We will be very happy. We are already working with government of Odisha on the power sector. But now that the Chief Minister has shown a very high level of ambition, we will be happy to work with government of Odisha in coming up with an integrated plan across sectors. What is the infrastructure requirement of Odisha in 10 years, in 20 years from now, and how we can make it a disaster and climate resilient infrastructure. So an integrated state level, high level, upstream policy engagement on the issue of a disaster and climate resilient infrastructure. And what Honorable MP is saying, what Honorable Chief Minister has been saying is really music to our ears. We can't get better buy-in from our constituencies in Odisha for this. So I hope that today's event is just the beginning of a dialogue. It's just the first step. We have a long journey on which we will walk together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that brief but powerful and action-oriented points there. And we would like you to repeat those 7 points. Someone is messaging me. Can we get the 7 points again? Someone missed and joined in between. So just the 7 points once again.
Okay, my first point is that we have to go in specifically in the case of Odisha, we have to go beyond saving lives to also saving livelihoods. And that really means that we focus on disaster and climate resilient infrastructure. In the first point, I gave the example of power sector impacts and how the power sector impacts in Odisha have been huge. So we've been saving lives, but not very successful in saving our infrastructure. And it has huge impact for not weeks, but for months for people. So that's my first point. My second point is that we have to do a better job of assessing risk to and from infrastructure, not just over the short term, but over the long term when the climate will have changed. When I say risk from infrastructure, sometimes the way we build infrastructure, it also creates downstream risk. A simple example is you build a road, the road is resilient, but on both sides you're causing flooding because you didn't take drainage into account. So we have to take that into account as well. My third point is that we need to upgrade our standards and regulations to meet with the needs of 21st century. You would be surprised to know that in the telecom sector, for example, and I have seen the impact that the telecom system had after Cyclone Fani, there are no standards for the way telecom towers are built. And when telecom towers go down, communication goes down and it has ripple effects. So that was my third point. Or fourth point, I don't know. I mean, you are keeping track, I hope. My fourth point is looking at predictable mechanisms for swift recovery in infrastructure, restoring services from infrastructure right after a disaster. So Government of Odisha has done some exemplary work, particularly in power sector, by stockpiling the materials, having a roster of workmen who will work in restoring power. So recovery is the next point. Then my fifth point is looking at finance. How do we finance infrastructure in a manner that it pushes us towards resilience? So when you are evaluating a project, the bankability of that project should be assessed on the basis of whether this project is going to lead to an infrastructure which will withstand the current and future risks or not. My sixth point was we have to bring in to picture the nature-based solutions or ecological infrastructure, role of wetlands, role of mangroves, role of forest cover, role of water systems and integrate them in our with infrastructure planning. We don't have to deal with the ecological infrastructure and physical infrastructure separately. We have to bring them together. And my final point was that rather than just looking at it sector by sector, you look at telecom, power, road, we have to take an integrated view. And my offer on behalf of NDMA and on behalf of the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure was that we honor the request of Honorable Chief Minister, Honorable MP, and very happy to work with Government of Odisha in coming up with a strategic framework for the state of Odisha on advancing disaster and climate resilient infrastructure. So these were the 7 points.
Thank you so much. And this was greatly helpful for our people who joined a little late. And thank you for encapsulating that fantastic 7 points. And we'll definitely come back to that. Shri Sujit Kumar sir, as you were required to attend an important meeting in a few minutes, would you like to have a little more?
I'll continue for another 15-20 minutes so that I can, I would love to get the introductory remarks of every panelist.
Right. So thank you so much there. So may I invite Dr. Kamal Lochan Mishra ji?
Yeah.
For the next presentation and sharing his introductory remarks.
Yes,
Briefly, I would like to introduce you, sir, and
Yeah.
an administrative officer of our state, at present Chief General Manager of Odisha State Disaster Management Authority, OSDMA, Government of Odisha. Varied work experience holding in senior positions in administration of field of organization as well as the policy making levels at the government and UN agencies levels as well. With professional experience more than 2 decades in disaster management across implementation, technical support, program management, planning, policy, advocacy, research, monitoring, evaluation-based roles, several field experiences and extensive experience in grassroots-based interventions and direct program implementation to managing country-level programs for Odisha supported by UN agencies, NDMA and Government of India. He has been working in various roles in Odisha State Disaster Management Authority, created after super cyclone. And before the enactment after DM Act, he played a crucial role in shaping the OSDMA into a vibrant, dynamic, innovative organization, which has received a number of prestigious national and international accolades and awards, including those of UN, the PM annual awards, and for outstanding work in disaster response, recovery, and management. He has strong technical background in institutional capacity building of state government, district administration, local government authorities for disaster management in line. So we have Dr. Kamal Mishra ji, fantastically complementing Sri Kamal Kishore ji in here at the national level, Kamal Kishore ji, and the state level, Dr. Kamal Mishra ji. Over to you, sir.
So thank you very much. Honorable Member of Parliament, Sri Sujit Kumar, Honorable Member of National Disaster Management Authority, Kamal Kishore, distinguished delegates to this very pertinent and timely webinar organized by Honorable Member of Parliament, Sujit Kumar ji. My profound thanks to Honorable MP for this great initiative. Sir, I have a small presentation and I will be rushing through that. So maximum 10-12 minutes I will be taking. So I'm just sharing it. So is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So just to start with, why we need disaster resilient infrastructure? As already Honorable Member of National NDMA has already indicated, what are the issues which actually should drive us to think about it? Because disaster management has come of age in our country since 1999, when Odisha lost about 10,000 very precious human lives, and the entire gamut of disaster management was looked into different perspectives. And within these 20 years, we have come from one step to another. First, it was response, then it was recovery, then it was preparedness. Then now the time comes, we should think about the future. And why I am just driving it to the information of all concerned, that the frequency and intensity of cyclones and disasters are increasing. So, and the most important thing is that so the point is, when we're talking about coastal Odisha or Odisha as a context, we should think that the intensity and frequency of the disaster is increasing because the climate is changing. And Odisha coast is more vulnerable than other Eastern Indian coast because we are geographically or strategically located in such a way that most of the cyclogenesis which occurs in Bay of Bengal has a landfall in Odisha. So after 110 years of data indicates this is the situation. And one more important aspect is that the storm surge is going to be a bigger issue because in the recent years, we found that more damage was done by the storm surge than wind speed. Yeah. So this was reiterated by the cyclone hazard assessment report of the Indian coastline by World Bank, and it shows that Odisha and West Bengal coast are going to the very high severity zone, and this is going to be the biggest problem because we have seen during the last 2 years we have been visited by 4 or 5 very severe and 1 super cyclone last year. So we have to think that disaster is not going to affect us right now in the only response field. It is going to affect our infrastructure in the far more hazardous way. So we have to think that how to build it in a far better way. So these are some of the examples. I am just photographs I am showing the geographic, climatic location Odisha is situated in. Odisha has 11 major river systems, and the coastal Odisha has a network of rivers which is already reached the base level of erosion. So the carrying capacity of the rivers of Odisha is very less comparison to other states of the country. And most of the rivers with the presence of the littoral current, strong littoral current, travel kilometers parallel to the coastline, thereby reducing the speed of discharge. As a result, the tenure of the flood that remains high. So all these things, they affect our infrastructure in a large way. As a result, we have to think properly in view of this context. So this is the flood vulnerability aspect which was prepared by the climate change report of Government of Odisha, that it is the 5th most flood prone state. And most of our power infrastructure, if they are not affected by cyclone or wind, they are affected by the water logging and submergence. So the monsoon effect that is coming, because we are a monsoon-fated country and Odisha is on the eastern seaboard of our country. So this is the report I have taken from this is the data I have taken from the global climate models contained in the climate change adaptation plan, CCS, climate change adaptation plan of Odisha. And it indicates that it is going to be higher rainfall in some of the areas, and we have to see that northwest and southwest Odisha, which are generally arid regions, will be receiving 40 to 72 mm of excess rainfall, average rainfall each year. And it has started showing that. So we have to see that even a 10% increase in Western Odisha will be devastating. Within a 5 to 10% increase in coastal Odisha will be also devastating, because there are certain areas which are not accustomed to high rainfall and waterlogging. So the point is that planning for district and block level and micro level, we have to take into consideration the local issues, microclimatic information, and other biophysical data. So our planning process must adhere to the climatic conditions, the climatic scenario that is evolving and emerging in the coming times. So this is another vulnerability I'm showing. Odisha is a coastal state, and it is almost 2-hour tsunami travel time from the Indo-Burmese flood boundary, which if a tsunami is triggered, it will hit the coast of Odisha in 2 hours time. So that is the tsunami travel time atlas prepared by IIT Kharagpur. And we are also a seismic vulnerable zone because most of the major cities and including the capital city of Odisha, all are located within the seismic vulnerability zone 3. Apart from that, we have a storm surge problem and coastal erosion problem. These are some of the examples of where coastal accretion and erosion are continuing, and we have to find our ways and means to address the issues by building the infrastructure resilient to this type of effects. So, sir, this is just a small comparison of the coastal vulnerability index of Odisha given by the climate change adaptation plan of the government of Odisha. And it is showing that almost 107 kilometers out of the 480 kilometers of coastline, the coastal erosion is high. And that indicates that all these 107 kilometers within 501 kilometers, which is the most densely populated and densely infrastructured areas, it has to be constructed in such a way that we withstand the storm surge and other hydroclimatic effects. So this is one representation of these coastal districts having the storm surge and erosion problem. And we have to address our planning accordingly. So this graph indicates that coastal erosion is getting a more prominent problem. It's converting itself into more prominent problem in the coming times and recently. So I'm drawing the attention of Honorable Member of Parliament and Honorable Member NDMA to support the initiatives of the state government in planning and as well in addressing the issues. So these are some of the pictures which already show that coastal erosion, coastal storm surge, because some of the makeshift arrangements which were taken up in different beaches. And this is a picture of Siali Beach in Jagatsinghpur district, where it has been miserably failed. So we have to think in a much bigger and much comprehensive way how to address our issues. So this is one picture of Ramayapatna village in Ganjam district, where shoreline erosion has already eaten away a substantial part of the village, and how hundreds of houses have been taken away. So the suggestion is that if at all we have to address this problem, we have to build the infrastructure in such a way that they withstand the erosion, and we have to protect the shoreline. Unless we do this, it is not only infrastructure that is on the land, but the infrastructure within the sea that will protect this. Otherwise, it should go on continue to erode, and whatever infrastructure we make on the land, it will get eroded out also. So this is just a report, Bay of Bengal shoreline threat perception, which was prepared by NIOT, National Institute of Ocean Technology. It was shared with us during one of with them. So they have suggested interventions, structural interventions, as well as non-structural interventions. Structural interventions includes bypass construction, embankment, groins, closure dams, etc. And non-structural is confined to early warning, evacuation, preparedness, cyclone shelters, etc. So I'm not going details into it because time will not permit, sir. But the point is, we have to think in a comprehensive way. There are certain areas which will require structural intervention, and there are certain areas which require non-structural. So a combination of the two, was already Honorable Member NDM has indicated, always approach has to be comprehensive. So these are suggestions given by the NIOT, and we are thinking and making our plan accordingly. Sir, coming to the resilient infrastructure, and which exactly we faced, the lack of which we faced during the last years. And this say, whenever any infrastructure is damaged or affected by any disaster, the restoration becomes a big problem, because there will be waterlogging, there will be inaccessibility, there will be transportation of materials and preposition of main machine and other things. So we have to think in advance. As a result, we can restore and do it in the shortest possible time. The biggest challenge can be addressed if we make our infrastructure resilient by addressing the issues. If a flood-prone area, we are having infrastructure, we can raise the platform and accessibility can be improved. Hello. So just to what government of Odisha has already taken initiative in this direction. This is the slide I have brought from the climate change adaptation and budget coding, because government of Odisha is one of the few states in our country. Odisha is one of the few states where the climate change action plan was initially adopted and it was implemented. And recently in 2019, we prepared this budget coding, and you can see that already we have divided the activities of different departments with respect to the relevance and sensitivity. So the water resources, energy, agriculture, and Panchayat Raj are considered as high relevance, high sensitivity areas. So we have to address the infrastructure developed by these departments because they are the most sensitive to climate change effects and the most relevant to the public infrastructure, public service, public conveyance, and livelihood. So, sir, coming back to the very pertinent issues where we have started addressing, we have already introduced different existing OH lines, overhead lines. Now we are trying to convert into underground cables or aerial bounced cables. And the result, we have seen that the things which were adapted in such a way, these were not affected neither by Amphan nor by Yas this year. So this shows that we can convert our existing just lines to NBLS, that is the narrow base lattice structures or H poles, because the experience of the Indian Railways has taught us that H poles are much more resilient than normal existing just lines. The point is that we have to invest a higher cost. So we have to take a balance, how much we can invest and how much we can expect in return. Because if it is not damaged in consecutive 2 to 3 cyclones, then the cost is recovered and we are in a win-win situation. So similarly, the compact substation design, substation placement could be thought in such a way that it will remain resilient to effects of the cycle, retrofitting of the substations, raging, all these things, very simple things we can adopt as a matter of principle so that our infrastructure becomes resilient. So, sir, this is one small slide I have information I have brought for you. The infrastructure is increasing because state is developing. In 2000, we had around 114,000 kilometers of STN line, LT and HT lines. Now in 2021, it has more than double and triple. So the point is, whenever we are developing, we are exposing our infrastructure more to the disaster and vagaries of nature. So unless we make it disaster resilient, we will continue to increase our vulnerability. So that is the issue we have to address. So, sir, these are some of the examples we have brought for you. So, sir, this is the mitigation plan of National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project of NDMA, and we constructed coastal erosion protection measures and very scientifically designed embankments, saline embankments. And it has been well appreciated by the Indian technical community who visited the state 5 years before under the aegis of NDMA. So some of the examples we have already adopted and the effect is tremendous and very comprehensive. So coastal erosion protection and other issues, energy infrastructure, which we are now relying, we have to think in long-term perspective, has already been indicated by Honorable Member NDMA. Sir, some of the examples are also mixed because the geotube technology we adopted, though it yielded some results, but the infrastructure could not sustain the impact of nature. So we are still learning, and the experts are required to advise us, not only from India, but outside. We are ready to accept their suggestions and advice to build a resilient infrastructure in whatever field. Some of the examples I've just brought for the information of all concerned, but this is not this is just an indicative list, and exhaustive list is not prepared here. So this is the Gabion bus technology, which was used to cover the geotube. The point is, we are trying to adopt technology to protect the infrastructure. If the technology is suitable, infrastructure will be stable. Or if the infrastructure is not suitable, all the cascading effects as indicated earlier by Honorable Member we'll be there and we'll be in a much inconvenient position that what we are now. Sir, last but not the least, I just want to mention that Honorable Chief Minister's statement, which he gave during Honorable Prime Minister's visit to Odisha after Super Cyclone Amphan, that we do not require assistance for response, that is for relief restoration. We require assistance for resilient infrastructure development. Again, he reiterated before Honorable Prime Minister's visit to Odisha recently in Yas, and this is the statement of the future. And I'm thankful to indicate that National Disaster Management Authority has just yesterday given us a direction that they have given a resilient infrastructure parameter to be incorporated in all the DPRs and tender documents invited by government for any engineering work. So we have now started circulating to all the engineering departments of the government of Odisha to put that in the tender document. So already policy level work has started. Government of Odisha have already started taking initiatives, and Honorable Chief Minister's leadership is showing in that way, because his statement like that we do not require assistance for response. It is just not a statement, it is a philosophy. It is a disaster management philosophy for infrastructure sustainability and infrastructure resilience. States should not be or need not be assisted to a large extent under SDRF. We require more funds under National Disaster Mitigation Fund or State Disaster Mitigation Fund. That should be the policy guideline of Government of India. That's my suggestion, and I will urge Honorable MP Sujit Kumar and Honorable Member to kindly have a brainstorming on this issue, and the Honorable Chief Minister Odisha's statement should be converted into an actionable point where states should be supported, including Odisha, for developing energy, or rather to say disaster resilient infrastructure in all fields. We have just cited two fields, that is in energy and coastal erosion. But the point is that all sectors, engineering interventions, real estate interventions must be supported by this philosophy. So with that, I think I have slightly overshot my time. Thank you very much. Any queries, etc. The topic is, I'm open for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. That was extensive and exhaustive as well. So I would like to request our other three panelists to share their just introductory remarks, because our MP sir has a meeting. He's very keen to listen to your introductory remark, maybe in 2-3 minutes each. We have three more eminent panelists with us. So may I request Dr. Ambika Prasad Nanda. I'm just giving one-line introduction from the head CSR Tata Steel. Can you just please make an introductory remark so that whatever summary you want to share with MP sir, then he can listen and take note of that as well. And subsequently, we'll come back to you again as well. Over to Dr. Ambika Prasad Nanda.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Das, and all my predecessors have covered very briefly or extensively on various issues. So I'm going to focus on the governance aspect of the way Odisha is leading in terms of managing disasters. I think in my recent book of COVID-19 and migration.
Can you please mute others? Team, can you please mute others? Yeah. Team, can you please?
In the recent book published by us, COVID-19 Migration and Sustainable Development, what we have highlighted is the compassionate governance that the state of Odisha is showing it to the entire world. It's not only like when I was part of the event system and filing was unfolding, and in that particular crisis time, our Honorable Chief Minister, when you are in crisis, if you come up with higher philosophical commitment, probably you can show the world how to save lives. And at that point of time, he had only one statement: zero casualty at any cost. And in filing, we showed it, even though it was a Category 5 cyclone, but we saved lives. And saving life is not just a small thing. And many researchers, I know University of Leicester in UK has set up an establishment of a particular network called avoidable death network based on the philosophical commitment of our Honorable Chief Minister. And in that particular statement, he has always said, in any governance system, people are also important stakeholder. And I know, like when with Government of Odisha, UNDP, and all of us were working on community-based disaster plan, and when we are trying to evacuate people, community as the first responder, they come forward and collaborate with the government institution and move to the safe locations. The infrastructure network post-99 super cyclone demonstrates the place for safe locations, but the willingness of the people to move to that has come out of that engagement and building of that social capital, which is being led by the philosophical commitment and the sincerity of all of us together. And friends, like as Kamala said, like there is very less time. If in any crisis situation, if mentally we accept defeat, then we would never be able to overcome that. And resilience is primarily the capacity to overcome any such situation. And when the state comes up, like be it natural disaster, be it COVID-19, even our Honorable Chief Minister also came up with the same statement. We are there and we are going to save each and every life. That itself gives a lot of hope to the people. And probably when the entire world was facing how to manage, the state in Odisha has delegated responsibility to the panchayats, the micro level of governance system to manage that. The confidence in the institutions, local governance system, that in itself shows a higher order of sincerity in saving the lives as well as the crisis, handling the crisis. And friends, I think I have probably 1 more minute. So I have few more points to share, but as Kamala said, all the speakers should have their due time. And one particular thing I would request Honorable MP, without people, any mass engagement we take, it would never ever see the success. And what I had tried earlier is called the participatory vulnerability analysis. And the amount of risk academically, if you analyze, is hazard into vulnerability divided by capacity. Through infrastructure and by training, you would only build the capacity. But the vulnerability would only be reduced if we really build the capacity of the people through this social capital formation. And when we feel ourselves from within that we can overcome this, then probably we can always do that. And last thing I would like to share, I think Odisha had shown people and converted Chandasok to Dharmasok, saving lives. What Odisha has demonstrated, we need to take it to the entire world. We need to take it to the entire world. And probably if you see, like we had one such discussion in the Indian Ocean rim, there are around 22, 23 countries which faces similar cyclones. And probably they can learn a lot from the way we are managing, and especially from the governance system. And governance is, and that in particular, I would like to share, any governance system, if it lacks compassion, can never ever save lives. And what Odisha has shown it to the entire world is can be articulated in only just one phrase, is that compassionate governance. And we must take it forward, and we must engage with other countries and other developing societies to learn and save lives of the people. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, Kamala.
Thank you, Dr. Ambikanand, for advocating that this can become a global philosophy. And with that, may I have the permission to invite Abhaji Mishra, our head Odisha UNDP team. Abhaji Mishra is also a climate expert and expert on disaster management, having worked at the national and state level. For your introductory remarks, madam, we'll come back to you again as well. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Sujit Kumar, Honorable Member of Interior Kamal Kishore, and my co-panelist. On the onset, let me thank the Office of Member of Parliament for giving me this opportunity. I will come back again to the whole presentation which I have done. But in 2 minutes, I would like to say, reiterate what Ambika just mentioned. community participation is very important. So, which we have very well done in Orissa. And community doesn't mean the village community itself. It's A to Z people living in this state. Everybody has come together, be it COVID, be it cyclone, and everybody has been able to save lives. Now it's a matter of saving the property and the infrastructure. Now, infrastructure is not just about power sector or transportation or telecom sector, or the urban infrastructure, which we are with 113 small big towns which we are having in Orissa. It also means the community-based infrastructure which is coming up, through, be it being built through the MG Narega or through different partnerships. So the one thing which is important also, while we look at other infrastructure which is robust in terms of provided by the state, we need to also bring in the climate change aspect into the community infrastructure. So what we need one is community awareness about climate change and designing of the community level infrastructure to become resilient. The second thing, which is slowly and steadily in Orissa we are starting to face, is the water stress. In many places we have too much of water or too less of water, and the patterns are changing. So that is another area of natural resource where infrastructure is available as well as the natural resources available. So we need to manage that. The third thing which is very important is to build on the partnership, which is public, private, and the community with the government, to ensure that we all work toward resilient infrastructure, because climate change is not just going to, as Kamal had mentioned, is not just going to have direct impact, but is also going to have indirect impact. So like COVID has actually impacted a lot of street vendors, the MSME sectors, the SME sectors, besides the big global private sectors. So we need to work on it. Finally, I would like to say all this can only be done if we have a very good governance structure with best of the legislations which support climate, the adaptation. It has the flexibility. It provides relevant funds at different. Because I'll just give you one example. When we talk about housing stock across the state, we have one solution for all. Same housing funds are giving in Koraput, in Sambalpur, in coastal Orissa. Is there a necessity to actually work, as my previous co-panelists have said, look at the analysis, look at the vulnerability specifically to climate change, and design the programs in the similar way. Thank you. Kamal, I will hand it over back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that brief comment. We'll definitely come back to you. You have a lot more experience of implementing the ongoing coastal resilience program as well. We'll come back to you on that. May I invite, last but not least, our member of the eminent panelist, Jyotiraj Patra, who is at the Oxfam, heading the Transboundary Rivers of South Asia program, the TROSA at Oxfam, Cambodia. So he is someone who has studied climate change, has studied the disaster. Over to you with a small introduction only there. So over to Jyotiraj for your brief comments there.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Kamla. And at the outset, I would like to again thank the Honorable MP for this opportunity and taking the initiative. My interventions are as follows for the Honorable MP to consider. So I have 3 I's in terms of what I'm going to share. The first one is integration. In terms of the climate resilient infrastructure, my previous speakers have already highlighted the various challenges that state is facing. But I would like to highlight that there is the need for integrated multi-hazard risk approach rather than a purely specific hazard, for example, cyclone or flood. So the important thing for us to consider when we are talking about climate resilient infrastructure is to gradually shift from a single hazard to more integrated multi-hazard risk assessment. And important part to that is also, as part of the integration, how do we ensure that the information and the scientific inputs that is being generated by various stakeholders are used in policy making. And this is an important area which I would like to emphasize, particularly from the disaster risk and climate risk a kind of community. A lot of research quite often doesn't make into the sort of the policy usage. So that is an area where I think more emphasis needs to happen when we're talking about integration. The second aspect of integration is which Honorable Member of Parliament, sorry, the Honorable Member of National Disaster Management Authority, Mr. Kamal Kishore also highlighted, the growing evidence around the hybrid infrastructure. It is not just the grey infrastructure, but including it with green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, the way we manage our wetlands, our coastal ecosystems, and forest and natural resources. I think that is very critical in terms of how do you move towards climate resilient infrastructure. And just the point that we recently witnessed large-scale forest fires in many parts of Odisha. And I just like to emphasize that we always talk about rapid onset disasters and quite often forget the slow onset disaster like forest fires, erosion and drought. And I think these are the areas which need further attention in order to further strengthen the multi-hazard risk assessment approach. So that was the first I integration. The second one I would like to emphasize is on innovation. When you talk about climate resilient infrastructure, the need is to innovate both in terms of engineering design, new material, new construction, and all these technological inputs. And some of those were shown before in one of the presentation, but also the importance of the governance innovation, which Mr. Ambikananda was referring to. And I think this is where the state of Odisha, in my opinion, is showing some significant contribution in terms of governance at the heart of climate resilience and disaster resilience and response. For example, the initiatives to bring different stakeholders together and ensuring that the different stakeholders are able to participate. And here, I would like to emphasize the role of the private sector and financial institutions. They play a very, very critical role when you talk about resilient infrastructure, and thereby and their kind of continued support to the initiatives at various levels is very, very critical. So I think innovation in governance is very critical when we think of the climate resilient infrastructure. The third I, from my perspective, is inclusion, and some of my previous speakers have already highlighted inclusion of the communities, inclusion of the people who are more vulnerable, and I think that is absolutely critical when we are talking about climate resilient infrastructure, because when the whole climate context is taken into account, we also need to understand the socioeconomic vulnerability of the communities of the people, particularly those who are marginalized from the marginalized sections, indigenous community, women and youth. So how can we mobilize their active participation and leadership in disaster resilient infrastructure planning and investment? So these are my three key points which I would like to share: integration, innovation, and inclusion. Professor Kamla, I would like to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyotiraj, being very succinct and to the point there. MP sir, if you are there, would you like to make a comment or a message or something? Then we would like to go to the next round.
Sure. Thank you, Kamlaji. This has been a very insightful learning experience for me. I think I'm echoing the sentiments of all the participants when I say that there has been a lot of learning, a lot of takeaways, a lot of actionable points that has emerged from the presentations and the interventions of all the panelists. My profuse gratitude to all of you for taking your time and for being part of these deliberations. And I'm sure some of this will be compiled and submitted to Government of Odisha, to OSTMA and other stakeholders. And we will carry forward this discussion. Thank you. Yeah, I'll take the leave of everyone.
Thank you, sir, so much, and giving that action orientation also, telling that we will compile the suggestions and recommendations, whatever is coming from this discussion, also follow-up discussion if required, also with our honorable esteemed panelists as well. So going to the next round, may I invite other people who have just made their presentations in brief and also to respond to some questions that have come. So if you have any other pressing point that you wanted to make, we have Kamalji, Kishore, and Dr. Mishraji, all they have made presentations kind of elaborately. And would you like to make any comments? I'll go back to Kamal sir first. After your keynote speech, you have heard about the Odishan context. You know, you are highly familiar with the ecosystem, and you also understand. So after listening to these people, would you like to make a brief comment or a brief appreciation or message or something like that? I would like to go back to you, sir.
No, Kamalji, I already spoke twice, so I don't want to take too much of everyone's time, and I would like to listen. I just want to say that from what I've heard in the last 1 hour, it seems all our thinking at the state and national level are quite well aligned. We just need to get onto the job. You know, we just have to act now. So really looking forward to continuing this engagement. And I think there are 3 Kamals, so there is nothing that can stop us now.
Right.
Sure, sir.
So, Dr. Nanda, I would like to come back to you. You made a brief statement there regarding the compassionate governance. I would like to a little bit add to that. How do you see, as Mr. Jyotiraj Patra is making that the private sector has an important role to play here? You belonging to both, you have worked with the government structure, with the multi-governmental structure like intergovernmental structure like UN system, now with the private sector, with the leading private sector in industry, Tatas. So how do you see the private players playing a role in infrastructure resilience, climate resilient infrastructure development? And how do you see, maybe briefly, would you like to share something there? Dr. Ambika Nanda, on the role of private players on climate resilient infrastructure.
Yeah, I think disaster affects each and everyone, and similarly the private sector also, they also equally get impacted. And when any private sector, they come up with their infrastructure, they initially they tend to ignore they use some of them, they take into consideration the high flood level, but never consider the frequency of disasters or the crises or the hazards that particular area faces. So of late, the advantage the private sector have is the readiness and willingness to adapt immediately, and they bring in the changes immediately in terms of infrastructure, so that the business should run as usual despite all the difficulties. So like you must have noticed, even though during this pandemic, a lot of this private sector are now working from home, a lot of people, and you would see that the efficiency and the production has not gone down in the private sector. In core industries, I think leaving aside people who work on the shop floor, majority of the people are working from home, and probably this pandemic is going to create a new order where like people not necessarily will have to come to office, and there would be so much of carbon footprint in terms of running around and doing that. If it can be done digitally and virtually, why not to do this? I think, and what private sector really has to offer is, because I am a new entrant to the private sector, so I have worked extensively with the communities, with UN system as well as with academics. But my exposure to the private sector is there are equally good and sensible people, and they all equally want to make the contribution in bringing a lot of change. So that's what when today I think there has been statement everybody knows in poverty situation, if everyone is not safe, even we are not safe. So similarly in disaster situation, I think Jyotiraj made a mention about we talk of big disasters, but we generally do not talk about the everyday disasters. I think there is a professor in University of Wengen, Dorothea Hillhurst. She has worked extensively, but not in the South Asian context, but in the Latin American context, like how people are facing everyday disasters. If a woman has to walk maybe 2 kilometers to get potable drinking water, that itself is also a kind of some kind of disaster and all that. I think when we are listening to a lot of the speakers who are in convergence in terms of the ideas, I have a lot of confidence in the communities. If we start engaging with the communities and bring that kind of orientation, probably all of you know in 1998, we had a heat wave in Odisha. Close to 2,000 people died. And when government of Odisha and a lot of NGOs and all of us, when we started working together, and today even, and that year, the temperature went up to 43, 44 degrees Celsius. And after that, it has gone up to 47, 48. But the death toll has been very less. Because if you can predict the hazard and build the capacity of the communities to cope, probably the resilience would surely come. And as a lot of people, and I think Mr. Kamal Kishore made a good mention about it, I think we need to focus on the carrying capacity of the ecosystem. If we are not focusing on that, only coming up with concrete or the gray infrastructure, which Jyotiraj was mentioning, probably that itself would be a burden on all of us. I think we need to improve, and that's why probably few days before only on June 5th, UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, started giving like how do we really recreate, recharge, and regenerate the ecosystem so that the carrying capacity is increased. And we also sensitize the communities to do sustainable harvesting, because of late what has happened, the neoclassical economic theory is being guided by that. Like every one of us, we try to appropriate whatever that we see rather than thinking about the society. If we can consider and focus on the social capital and improve the carrying capacity of the ecosystem, probably we would be able to create a just world for the future generation. And I think all of you have shared about it. And if we don't do it, having all the luxury of studying in good institutions, working in good institutions, having so much of network, if we don't do it, who else would do it? I think that's what I think Mr. Kamal Kishore just talked about it. And probably the time has come, and maybe Mr. Kamal Kishore can take the lead to, there are all the flowers everywhere, Kamalji. You need to make a garland out of it. If we do that, then probably the world would come to know what India has to contribute to the entire world, not only in saving lives, but also addressing the issues of and the vagaries of climate change. Thank you, Kamala, for giving me more time.
May I come in?
Yes, please.
Yeah, actually, the role of private sector in developing resilient infrastructure is very close to my professional engagement in the disaster management in government. Actually, there are many friends and many corporate sector colleagues who engage with OSDMA during the last so many years. And what I have learned from their experiences and the experiences of government and interaction between the government and private sector. Just I want to put it, many of the private sectors, they want to build their infrastructure resilient to disaster, but the platform inside their planning does not include this disaster resilience. Because I have time and again, one company which was going to set up in Paradip, he came to us, sir, please tell us something about the disaster vulnerability of the area. When I opened that, you are a cyclone prone area, what is the wind speed, then this is the wind shear, and the infrastructure should be like this, then you are tsunami prone, then you are flood prone, waterlogged. Then he was taken aback, sir, actually our planning team, our architecture firm, they did not mention all these things. So the point is, many of them are willing to do, but they don't have the resources and don't have the wherewithal to do it. Number two, the departments of the government which are actually promoting industries, they are good people, they are very well-intentioned people, but they don't have that interface between the disaster management organization inside the state and also outside. So my point is that private sector can be engaged with the disaster management authorities. Actually, there could be a diktat or could be an advisor issued by an NDMA just to facilitate. Right now, the NDMA has done that. All the real estate tender process, the tender document will have that disaster management clause. So at this very concept of preparation of the estimate will be augmented by the inclusion of this component. So this is one thing that could also be transferred to private sector. The number two, private sector, they sometimes when they prepare their own infrastructure or logistics, they don't have that mechanism to put for the disaster resilience additional expenditure to their loan process or loan documents, because banking or the financial sector is not acquainted with this type of thing. So there is a gap, and there is a very genuine gap. And the private sector, since they are not supposed to develop the public infrastructure, only they can develop the infrastructure within their premises, they can support. We can support them in developing their corporate social responsibility expenditure wherever they are building any infrastructure. Container Corporation of India, they decided to contribute 2 crores to OSDM for construction of cyclone centers way back 2 to 3 years before. When the actual construction happened, it went up to 2.6 crores. And there was certain, because their project was closed, so we had to contribute. So in that way, had OSDM not contributed, the construction would have been compromised with lesser aspect of the less inclusion of the vulnerability. So there are certain procedural issues where private sector face. So my suggestion is that private sector, their internal mechanism should be augmented to have a better or more exposed or more interactive interface with government departments, especially the disaster management authorities. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for making that brief but very important intervention, because you are aware of this situation in Odisha, maybe you're aware of the situation in India as well. So may I request Jyotiraj to make a point on that? What do you think about private sector in the role there? Also, as you work in there, what will be the role of civil society? If you can add the quick pointers, then I'll go to Abhaji Mishra also, talking about that. What kind of role UN agencies play in creating climate resilient infrastructure, and how do you see communities playing a role there? So with those two questions to our two eminent panelists next. So Jyotiraj, what is your take on the private sector role there? And how do you see community playing a role there as well?
Thank you, Professor Das. And I think just sharing, I'm not representing the private sector, but as part of the work, we interact a lot with the private sector, particularly not only the people who are like part of the corporates, but also people who really finance them. So private sector and finance are two different things. I think there are a lot of background noise. Yeah, so what I'm trying to say, just what Mr. Mishra also highlighted in terms of the role of the private sector. And I think this is very critical, and NDMA and CDRI under the leadership of the Honorable Member NDMA, Mr. Kamal Kishore, I think they are facilitating these kind of dialogues at the national and at the global level. And there is, if you look into those dialogues and conversation, there is a lot of buy-in from the private sector because it's business for them. They don't want to put their own infrastructure and investment at risk. So I think at the state level, it would also be useful for us to think of a kind of a multi-sectoral or multi-stakeholder partnership, bringing in these kind of initiatives which are being done by CDRI at the national or the global level, and bringing to the subnational level where we facilitate these kind of dialogues and buy-in from the private sector, financiers for disaster resilient infrastructure. So I think that could be one way forward. And as the Honorable Member is here, I think under his leadership, this would be taken up with the support from the Honorable MP. The second point I'm also trying to highlight, and also building on what the Honorable Member earlier said, the need for nature-based solutions. And I think this is a growing area of not only interest, but also a lot of policy emphasis at the national, global, and state level, particularly ensuring that we not only focus on the gray physical infrastructure, but try and integrate some of the ecological infrastructure that are very critical for the functioning ecosystems on which the livelihoods of people depend. And linked to it, I would like to emphasize that most of the time when we talk about this ecological infrastructure, we tend to focus on a single geography. So these ecological systems, or the ecosystem we call them, they don't sort of respect boundaries. They are transboundary in nature, whether it's a river flowing from one state to the other, or it's the mangroves in the Sundarbans between India and Bangladesh. So I think that brings us to the point where we need a lot of transboundary or sort of cross-state coordination and collaboration on climate resilient infrastructure. For example, if we look into the state of Orissa, what's happened in the Mahanadi River system, a lot of it has to do with what's happening upstream. So any kind of disaster risk, any kind of climatic impact on the upstream will have impact downstream. So how do you bring in stakeholders? How do you bring in governments who are in the whole basin? So the point I'm trying to make is when we're talking about climate resilient infrastructure, you also need to think about the whole basin or the whole landscape in which we are operating, and that the need for more kind of cooperation across political boundaries. And I think I will start here. Thank you, Professor Das.
May I go back to our next expert, eminent expert, Abhaji Mishra. Madam Ji, how do you see UN agencies playing a role there in creating that kind of an ecosystem, creating awareness and integrating activities as you work for some the organization which is the integrator of SDGs in the UN system, which is UNDP. So how do you see that government in public policy, how climate resilient infrastructure who can integrate that? Should that be done by OSDMA? Should, like as we have seen, there are silos in some government departments, both in state and central level sometimes. So private sectors also struggle to interact. So what kind of role UN plays there, both at the policy level and articulation level, awareness level, also at the advocacy level, at the ground level, when you implement certain projects? What kind of methodology do you use to engage with community? And you are already working on coastal resilience. So would you like to share some of those insights with our audience today? Over to you.
Right. Thank you, Kamal. I think a lot of good points have been brought in by my co-panelists. Well, when you talk about UNDP and UNDP's role, if you really look at it, since the super cyclone of 1999, UNDP has been working on disaster management. And disasters, the disaster which was managed or which was started we talking about was all weather-based disasters, flooding, cyclonic storms, droughts, heat waves. So in keeping with that, we have been supporting both national and the state governments, and supported in both in terms of legislations, in terms of institutional strengthening, in terms of bringing in what type of financial mechanisms could be thought about, certain types of innovation, and of course capacity building and awareness. Now, when we look at all of these things, there was a question in the chat box which talked about how do you build a resilient infrastructure. So I would just give you an example from UNDP's role, which could also, which most of the state governments are also doing it. They have their intelligence, as Kamal Babu also said, that governments have taken first steps now, and specifically in the power sector. Now, after the super cyclone, there was one particular project which was there, which was called shelter management. What did a shelter mean? A shelter could be a individual's house. It could be an Anganwadi. It could be a community center, or even could be a big government building. Now, there are technologies available which are there. So it was used, which are disaster resilient. So it was used to support, to train masons, to train engineers and build certain infrastructure. When UNDP visited it back in 2013 after the Phylline earthquake, Phylline cyclone, we found them to be running schools running in the same building, Anganwadi centers, people living in it. Reason? Because it had disaster resilient features, which was very typical to that particular area. So what we really require is, as Jyoti Raj also mentioned, and Kamal also mentioned, Honorable Member of NDMA mentioned, that we need to think about it from a green perspective, which basically means that you look at the ecosystem which is available, what is the landscape of it, do a proper analysis for the various risks, and then build your structure. Now, the structure is, as we've all mentioned, it could be houses, it could be buildings, power sector, telecom sector, water supply systems, or road network also. I'll give you another example. In one of the Puri districts, we had a small project which talked about water management. And with Orissa, we also had MP. MP was low water, and Orissa was more water. More water was in Sukol, in Satyabadi block of Puri, and the Delta area. It used to have, 2-3 months of water logging, but now it had increased to 5 months. Now, what type of crops have to be produced? What should be the height of the road? What is the drainage system of the area? What should be the how high the water pump systems or water structures to there, so that you get clean water, drinking water? All these were talked about by the community. Community used their own funds from the panchayat. They contributed in terms of, and they brought in a little sea change in their small village. But these are very small pilot projects. So we need to go beyond that. And I think we may have to start a request to NDMA, start again thinking about the hazard safety cells, where all the plans, infrastructure plans, are actually reviewed like the environmental approvals are given. Because we don't really look at the environmental impact assessment is not really looking at very clearly about these infrastructure, these disaster points. So we may have to relook into it. That guidelines have to be changed. Along with that, I would also suggest is we should have a consortium where we have some flexi funds to innovate, support startups, where these small nuances can also be thought of. Because many a times the solution is not broad-based. It has to be very, very area-specific solutions. So we need to have some innovation there. While it has been provided under the centrally sponsored scheme, but not many are able to utilize it. So maybe we need to revisit and see how we can strengthen that. And the final point I would like to make is UN per se is in Orissa has a program on coastal resilience, where most of the departments of Orissa are partners, and it is anchored with the Department of Forest and Environment, and OSDMA is also a major partner in it. It has just kicked in, it has not started, but it is again based on landscapes. So we are looking at, let's say, Brahmagiri, the whole Chilka landscape. So in the Chilka landscape, the planning has to be in such a way, the infrastructure, the community's coping mechanism has to be developed in that thing. And government of Orissa, I have to mention, in the recent resolution of the Council of Ministers, has given a lot of emphasis on educating each and every person of this state, be it an elected representative, a CSO, government officer, or even the students from schools to the colleges. So when we are and that is being, and it Kamal Kishore, Kamal Mishra sir is actually handling that, anchoring that, and we have been discussing it, and I am sure in couple of years we will have a better educated people in the state to support climate resilient infrastructure also. We already have moved forward with one sector, that is power. We need to move faster in housing and other things, but we may have to, even though we have that vulnerability word in the guidelines, we may need to bring in a little more changes to ensure that the houses which are built in the coastal regions or in any other regions, Koraput is having urban flash floods. So how do we take it forward? So we may have to also look at these nuances like Jyoti, Ambika, Kamal sir and Kamal Kishore sir have mentioned. We need to bring in these small variations in the areas. Thank you. Over to you, Kamal.
Thank you so much for giving that clarity.
What did you
for
say,
so many
Abha?
people.
You were addressing me. Oh, there is confusion. There are so many Kamals. So every time there is the name after it was me. Sorry, go ahead.
I think
So,
if you have something to reply back to, you could also, if
Kamal
Kamal.
Kishore ji, you can respond to Abhaji, yeah, if you want to.
The only response I can give is yes, I agree with everything.
Right. Thank you. So we can go forward for next for 10-15 minutes. And Kamalji Kishore has already mentioned that he has an important engagement to leave. And thank you for joining us and giving us from the very beginning, keynote speech, kind of setting the tone. So what we are planning, the MP office will be collating this information together to create a policy document, policy document on the climate resilient infrastructure document under your guidance, and we'll be definitely getting back to you as well for your guidance and inputs. One question, some people have asked few questions. Let me ask this question here. There is one question here which says, UN has been actively collaborating with the governments and private sector to promote more DRIs aligned with Sendai framework for DRR. What has been some of the key initiatives in India and Odisha in particular? What in your experience are some of the key opportunity areas of improvement, especially in the case of Odisha here? So Abhaji, would you like to respond to that? Or Dr. Mishra?
Okay. Kamal sir, you would like to say first?
Please you respond first.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have been, UN agencies have been really working hard with both government at the national level as well as the state levels. So, and it is not just UNDP, but it's all the UN agencies. If you really look at this pandemic situation, the agencies which have been supporting the national and the state governments, at the national government, you have UNDP coming in with supporting the institutional strengthening system. So we have the CoWIN app, we have the logistic management, and we have a lot of those things which we've done. The technical support has been provided by the WHO, while the communication materials and certain other handholdings and trainings and other things are done by WHO, UNICEF, and UNFPA also. So, all the agencies are working towards the Sendai framework. They're looking at that, and wherever their own priorities are there, they're working along it. Now, coming back to UNDP, UNDP has one of the areas which UNDP is also working on, which we have not talked about. We have to also look at the urban infrastructure, because urban areas are increasing, while telecom and other things in the rural areas get impacted very fast, but the restoration of power sectors is very fast in urban areas, but we need to also look at those, and specifically the water management is very, very important. It could be the wastewater or it could be the fresh water also. So that is another thing. So urban infrastructure development is something which we really have to do. And when we are talking about climate change, you have heat islands being made in the urban areas. You have certain areas where urban flooding happens, which I'm sure we are all looking at recently in Mumbai, in Pune, in Delhi, and many of the southern states. So that is what it is. In terms of the climate change, many of the climate change action plans, about 9 or 10 of the action plans across the country has been prepared by, has been supported by UNDP, and the governments are budgeting for it and then taking it forward. Unfortunately, in Orissa state is always on the forefront, and we are on the second climate change action plan in the state, and this was totally done by the Orissa state, along with, I think, GIZ and to a certain extent the science and CSE, Central Science, CSE, I'm forgetting its full name, Center for Science and Environment. So they had worked on it. I think there was a question for me specifically, which they said drought and cyclones. I want to just let you know that UNDP had worked in 2002 to 2008 in drought mitigation project in the Western Orissa. And that's one of the things also which we are working. But unfortunately, as one of the co-panelists had mentioned, many a times slow disasters are not the ones which we frequently talk about, despite it being a part of the climate change scenario. Over to you, Kamal Das.
Yeah, thank you very much, Abhaji. Actually, UN agencies have been working with the government as a partner in many of the disaster resilient and disaster mitigation activities. UNDP's engagement with government of Odisha in formulating that the first major project we had implemented. Then UN agencies have been working with OSDMA and government of Odisha in formulating the planning process of disaster management from different levels. Then capacity building. Then infrastructure development. UN agencies have also provided the basic first input for setting up the State Institute of Disaster Management as a concept profile. The other UN agencies like UNFPA, UNICEF have been providing in their own domains, especially UNICEF's contribution to government of Odisha in terms of COVID-19 management, which was declared by government of Odisha as a disaster for the first time in the country. They have prepared a complete comprehensive volunteer list. They have assisted in designing the training curriculum and training program of the self-help group members and others. They have also assisted in preparation of the documentation, and last list is quite long. And I just want to emphasize here that UN agencies like UNFPA, UNDP, World Health Program, and other agencies, they provide their assistance in their own domains, and government is virtually for the organization, UN organizations, in terms of technical assistance, knowledge inputs, and intellectual support for formulating the policy planning framework. So we are really thankful and recognize their contribution to the field of disaster management in the state.
So thank you, all the esteemed panelists. We have answered each other's question to an extent, also question from the audience. If there are any pressing questions that audience have, you can either type or unmute. So this, if you can see the messages or any questions, can you read for our panelists, please? Any quick questions? Someone has raised hand also.
Actually, there is a question for me. What is NDMS instruction for climate resilient infrastructure construction in a long coastline of Odisha vis-a-vis Indian standard course? Actually, NDM has shared a directive, or rather say an advisory, a set of 10-15 points, which will be the part of the bidding document or the RFP, that is request for proposal, or the DPR. So their intention is to include disaster resilience construction from the very inception. That is, whenever we are preparing the DPR or the floating the RFP or floating the bidding document, all these things will be incorporated. So this is a very pertinent, for the first time they have advised us, and we have also circulated to all the engineering departments of our state to incorporate this as a part of their relevant documents. And we are also thinking of issuing a government order type of thing so that it will be mandatory. So I have already discussed the matter with Development Commissioner, Special Relief Commissioner, who is also the managing director of SDMS, Pradeep Jana, and that could be taken up. So this is one good thing, good initiative taken by even NDMA, because that was there, but it was not formalized or it was not mandatorily imposing. Now it has been taken back. So that was from for me. Any other question? I don't think.
So there is one more question.
Yeah, please tell.
So this is from Kumar Abhinav. The question is, do you think all administrative officers and organizations should be trained with disaster management and response training pan Odisha, or just organization working in vulnerable areas?
The answer is absolutely yes. There is no, we are bound to learn, we are bound to be trained. And already the State Administrative Training Institute, the Revenue Officer Training Institute, the State Institute of Disaster Management, or the Disaster Management Training Cell, whatever the outfit available in the state, everywhere disaster management has been incorporated as a major component in training. And we have right now, you must be aware that Honorable Chief Minister has announced, or the Council of Ministers has made resolution, passed a resolution by giving a long-term target or mandate to SDMA to formulate training programs from the ward members to the Honorable Chief Minister. So that is the wording. From the ward member to the at the lowest level of public representation to the highest level, that is Honorable Chief Minister. So everybody will be trained in disaster management. That is number one. That includes all the Panchayat Raj institutions at the 3-tier level, in the Gram Panchayat, Panchayat Samiti, and the Jila Parishad. Then the MLAs, Honorable MLAs and MPs, and Honorable Chief Minister included. This is number one. Number two, all the government level, government functionaries, all levels. So there will be, already we have there that plan of action and we're implementing, but that will be more formalized. Now this will be converted into a type of government directive that unless a government servant passes in a disaster management course, either a paper or a document or a special paper, his confirmation or subsequent increments will not be allowed. So that type of seriousness now being incorporated in the system. Number three, we want to create a Jodha in each home. That is the philosophy or the directive of the government. A disaster management Jodha in each home. That means every house will have a trained disaster management volunteer. So that type of incorporation capacity building is now. So government servant have to learn, and OSDM is working on that. Thank you.
So there's one more question from Murchana. The question is, the Grid Corporation of Odisha, GRIDCO, was one of the first net zero energy buildings in the country. So are there any plans for further expansion of weather-oriented infrastructural methods such as that of net zero energy buildings in Odisha?
Actually, GRIDCO is a pioneer organization, and GRIDCO in collaboration with OPTCL, Odisha Power Transmission Corporation Limited, both the agencies are government agencies. So they are working on energy resilient infrastructure, and the zero, the modern concept which is being raised, I think they are working on it as on a sustainable basis. So what I was discussing the matter with OPTCL senior officials when they had interaction with the CDRI, but Honorable Member NDM was in fact mentioning. When CDRI DG had come here to discuss about the energy resilient infrastructure development, and OPDCL and Gridco, they were on the right path and the right track as per the guidelines. So that includes this zero concept. Here there is a hand from Mr. Jyoti Sarup.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Good morning.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning.
Yeah, Jyoti sir, be brief and tell us what is your question and to whom you want to respond.
I'll just take 1.5 minutes. I am a guest in this. I don't know how I was invited. I must say, Orissa is the very lucky state. I'm working on a project. I'm a project consultant. I'm working on a project in Uttarakhand, and that is for nuclear installation. So all these, whatever you have said, I am facing that problem. And in addition to that, that has all those problems what you have mentioned. In addition to that, it falls under seismic zone 4. So every problem comes with a opportunity. So I have only 3 suggestions to make. What you all people are saying, that's a music to my ears. I'm just wondering, Odisha is such a beautiful state where government is thinking on those lines. Unfortunately, I am not getting that type of support from Uttarakhand government. Let me admit it. My suggestion to you is, to the government, to the all elite panelists is, we should take 3 things also into this. Whatever you have said, that is excellent. One thing is, the development should be the integrated development. All the agencies, disaster management, UNDP, government, NREGA, whatever it is, it has to be done in an integrated manner. Our basic aim is to have a system where ultimately we should reach up to a stage where our disaster management is not just to evacuate the people. How we can make that infrastructure so that during the cyclones or during this, people remain there and we can face it. And take it from me, this is possible. This is possible. 2 things are missing in this. One is the private sector participation. I am from the private sector. I want to do many things for the society. And I have got 2 suggestions to make it here. Government has made CSR compulsory. Why not to, because what companies do, that CSR funds, they spend on just giving the poor medicines and all blah, blah, blah things, you know. Why not to allow them to spend that money into disaster management and developing the infrastructure for the common peoples? Secondly, we should integrate common peoples also in this scheme of things, which is missing in this link. That is my suggestion. And my particular suggestion in this is, along the coastline where the corrosion is taking place, we can have fisheries developments that will uplift the common people, and that will be a sort of a barrier between sea and our land. And this will give earning potential also to the peoples. I have specific plans for them, and we can use recycled material. I mean, the waste which is coming from the industry, like plastics, like lot of mining surplus are there. Lot of things are there. I have specific plans. If you can, because if I speak much here, I'll take much more time.
Yeah.
I can be very
Thank
strict.
you.
Thank
you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your brief intervention and telling that private sector can play an important role. Thank you for that. And we'll get back to you. Please stay in touch with your suggestions. So this is time to say thank you to all our esteemed panelists, to our audience who joined on Zoom and also live on Facebook, to everyone who has worked at the back end to make this possible, and to our guiding, mentoring a team from Sri Sri University, from Kalinkushum, and from UNDP. And special thanks to MP sir, who is thinking that how our discussions can make an impact in everyone's life, including in policy discussions. So this is the time to say a great thank you to all our panelists and all our audience and students and interns at the MP office. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kamalji and others, all the panelists from OSTM and from Government of Odisha. I extend a warm thank you to all.
Thank you, Kamal Mishra ji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ava Mishra ji.
Thank
You, Dr. Nanda. Thank you, Mr. Jyotiraj.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the participants.
Thank you.
Eh?